When THQ closed its doors, one of the questions regarding existing IPs was about the soon-to-be-released sequel to Metro 2033. Deep Silver were quick to snap up the property, allowing Metro Last Light to be released as close to schedule as possible. Metro 2033 was based on the book by Dmitry Glukhovsky. Last Light was inspired by the same work, but the storyline was written by developer 4A Games, rather than being taken from the pages of a bestseller. This sequel returns the player to the dank, cramped confines of the Moscow metro, where survivors of a nuclear holocaust try to eke out an existence amid petty political rivalries, corruption and crime. The player once again steps into the shoes of Artyom, the hero of the original title, as he takes to the tunnels and devastated surface to protect his people from a massive threat. Metro Last Light is an unconventional first-person shooter because it doesn't follow established trends. There is no multiplayer component to the game, and the single-player experience is more story-driven than that of the average shooter. It won't appeal to some, but fans of the original will find a similar and, yes, improved experience waiting for them. Although the PC version of Last Light is best in terms of visuals, the console versions aren't slouches in that department. The setting lends itself to great lighting effects, which Last Light has in spades. Much of the game is very dark, with Artyom's flashlight illuminating intricate and interesting areas. 4A manages to create a very believable world, where everything seems to be cobbled together from scraps, including weapons. Some of the textures could have been better, but for the most part the visuals play their part in creating a great image of this dystopian future. The character models are detailed and well created, resulting in complex creatures and a cast of recognizable non-player characters. Small details in both add a spark of life to what we see while playing the game, helping to create an even deeper immersion in Last Light's depressing world. The voice acting further helps to reinforce the illusion, even though it isn't great at the best of times. Strong Russian accents abound, which can sometimes lead to oddities in inflection and pronunciation. Many of the characters in the game are chatty too, which means you're going to hear a lot of very odd words. As far as sound effects go, 4A seem to go with a less is more approach. This results in moments of chilling silence, perhaps interrupted by the chink of a kick bottle or, less ideally, the rumbling growl of some mutated critter hiding just around the next corner. The overall quality of the sound effects is very good, fitting the game's setting perfectly. There isn't a lot of audio repetition either, which is refreshing. The controls have been improved since the last Metro game, giving Last Light a slicker feel overall. Concepts from the first game are still there, and much is done to keep the player immersed in the game, rather than skipping through menus. The AI is a bit smarter too, but doesn't offer the player too much of a challenge. While the player will spend a lot of time running around stealthily in the dark, human enemies can be rather daft at times, and an all-out gun battle really shouldn't pose many serious problems. Mutant enemies, on the other hand, can be a lot tougher. They will swarm the player more often than not, and can prove to be rather difficult. The result is a game that doesn't have a smooth difficulty curve, but rather goes through peaks and troughs. This adds a nice organic feel to the whole affair. Last Light uses the same economic model as the original. High-grade military rounds are used as the in-game currency. They can also be used to add a bit of extra damage to the player's attacks, but the game never really gets that tough that a player will feel compelled to burn through their savings by shooting bad guys. Another aspect that makes a welcome return is the fact that the player will spend time in areas that are bad for Artyom's health. That means the gas mask and filters are back, along with the tension that limited time adds to certain missions. Last Light is more generous with filters though, and the player will spend a lot more time outdoors in this title than they did in Metro 2033. If one element stands out above all others in Metro Last Light, in terms of importance, it is the plot. The game is driven by it, and the idea is reinforced over and over again. There are a lot of set pieces and scripted events, and Last Light plays out in a very linear fashion. While this could be a negative point for many gamers, it works in this case. Players will find their second journey through the Moscow metro to be an experience that blends cinematic values with gaming concepts. The end result is a game that feels almost like an interactive movie. The plot is fairly straightforward and easy to understand. Underlying it though are bigger concepts that are quite deep and relevant to a broader arena than just Last Light. Because of this, players who dash from one end to the other really are losing out. This game needs you to stop and smell the flowers. Listening to conversations is vital to the experience, whether they are key to the plot or just flavorful eavesdropping sessions that help enhance the setting. The third act of the game seems to falter a little when compared to the earlier section, but this doesn't really ruin the experience. By the time the player gets to those points, they should, in theory, be so sucked into the drama of the narrative that the weaker plot aspects that crop up are little more than annoyances. With no multiplayer options and a linear delivery, the replay value of Last Light is not as high as it could have been. Ranger mode, which is cheekily available as DLC, gives the player a more realistic experience thanks to a limited HUD and next to no hints, as well as tougher combat and scarcer resources. But it is really just a second playthrough of the same story. When all is said and done, Metro Last Light is a fairly powerful piece of digital entertainment. It avoids norms set by other games and follows a road less traveled in terms of combining compelling game dynamics and a good plot. This may certainly not be every gamer's cup of tea, because there are protracted periods in the telling of this tale when no shots are fired in anger. But 4A have a story they want to tell, and those willing to experience it will have a good time. If you're the type of gamer who only cares about amassing weapons and getting maximum headshot per minute ratios, you may find the organic pace and heavily scripted nature of Last Light is not your thing. However, if you appreciate a good story and an engrossing experience that extends beyond how many enemies you can drop, this title holds many rewards.